Juan Soto and Clay Holmes sure know how to make a first impression. On today's show, I'll talk about the first spring training game for the New York Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app right at FanDuel.com to get started. Saturday marked the first game of spring training for the New York Mets, and they played in front of a packed house. The 7 line was there. There was well over 7,000 people in Port St. Lucie. It was the second largest crowd the Mets have ever had for a spring training game. The most came when Matt Harvey returned off of Tommy John in 2015. Remind you how electric Harvey was, what a fan favorite the Dark Knight was. But Juan Soto brought the crowd, and he knew exactly what to do to greet them. First inning, he gets himself into a 2-0 count, swings through a fastball, put a really big swing on it, trying to really greet the fans with something that they could cheer for. Then he gets another fastball that was put on an absolute tee right down the middle at 91 miles per hour. He knew exactly what to do with it, crushed it over 400 feet to left center field. And he homers in his first at-bat as a New York Met. Now, this is obviously just a spring training game. We're not going to make too much out of it. This is nowhere near the home runs that we were watching 5-6 months ago as the Mets had to push and fight to get into the playoffs. And then, of course, those incredible home runs that carried them on that deep playoff run. You can't compare what we saw then to Saturday afternoon in Port St. Lucie. With that said, there was still a lot of buzz in the ballpark. This is the first game of spring. There's always a little more attention on it. The first time you get to hear Gary, Keith, and Ron on the SNY broadcast. And you saw Juan Soto get up for this game. He downplayed it after, said, it's nothing special. It's just a spring training homer. And that's what you're supposed to say. But you saw the way he ran out on the field. He knows the moment. He knows that all eyes are on him. And he wanted to make that great first impression. And to me, this just is a little reminder, just a little taste of what's to come. To see Juan Soto in a moment that's not big, but as big as a moment can be in this setting, right? It's an exhibition game. It doesn't matter. If he strikes out, we're not talking about it. It really doesn't matter. But when he hits a home run, you're going to talk about it. And I'm going to spend a segment on Locked On Mets breaking it down because it means something. It is the beginning of an era. The Juan Soto era. I talked about this 2 days ago on the show, on Friday's episode, breaking down why Juan Soto will be worth every single penny to the New York Mets. And yeah, it's going to be tough for the Mets to recoup $765 million in revenue across 15 years based on Soto's impact alone. But you know what? If the New York Mets are a contending team for a majority of those 15 years, yes, they will get that back and then some. And his ability to impact the game as a hitter is second to none in the history of the New York Mets. I think the closest the Mets have ever had is the one guy that has been inducted into Cooperstown from the New York Mets, and that's Mike Piazza. I'm talking about from the hitter side. Obviously, we know Tom Seaver in Cooperstown as well, but that is the bar that Soto is trying to chase here. And for Mike Piazza, it was a shortened run, right? He was a catcher. He started to break down near the end of his Mets tenure. He wasn't going to perform for a decade like Juan Soto hopes to. But Juan Soto's career numbers up to this point are better than what Piazza put up prior to coming to the Mets. And Mike Piazza had some great years, but Juan Soto has the ability to become head and shoulders the best hitter this franchise has ever seen. He has that talent in there. And again, I'm not going to say, that was all realized when he took a 91 mile per hour fastball and crushed it over 420 feet. Yeah, it was great. It was an awesome moment. It was an awesome highlight to watch. It was great to see the fans react to it. But it's more just a reminder that this guy is the type that will deliver in those big moments, that when the pressure's on, this guy has been a great postseason performer. This is the type of guy who last year, making his Yankees debut, he had a crazy game. I can't remember exactly what it was. I know he had the outfield assist, had some big hits. I think he had like either a game-winning hit or he put the Yankees up. They go 4 for 4 against the Astros. Apologies to the Yankees fans that might be tuning in. Actually, not apologies, because how does it feel to watch Juan Soto in a Mets uniform and then to see a guy that you had as your closer, who was a failed closer at the end of last season, look like a freaking ace for the Mets? We're going to talk about Clay Holmes in a minute, because Clay Holmes was really, I think, the bigger story, the bigger takeaway we can have from this game. So, hey, Yankees fans, eat your hearts out. But Juan Soto's ability to deliver in big moments is something that we're going to really get used to as he's in a Mets uniform. And I wouldn't call this a big moment, but again, in this particular setting, it's as big of a moment as you could possibly get. And again, 91 miles per hour right down the middle. It's not impressive necessarily what Soto did, but it's the way he did it. And it's the fact that he didn't get under that ball. Other guys who are so juiced up, they might get under it. They might get under it and hit one to the warning track, or even pop one up. But Juan Soto squares it up, crushes a home run, and just reminds you what the Mets are paying for here. So that was a pretty awesome moment to see Soto do that. I can't wait to see what happens when it's these two teams again. And a little over a month now for opening day, probably the same starting pitcher for the Mets. I'm sure it won't be the same starting pitcher for the Astros, but Clay Holmes will likely take the ball. And we'll see what Juan Soto can do then in a Mets uniform in a regular season game for the first time. I'm sure there is plenty of magic in his bat that we're going to watch throughout this season. So cool moment there. Other notes on the hitting front, not a lot to talk about. First game of spring, Lindor went 0 for 2 with an RBI. Pete Alonso walked in both of his at-bats. Francisco Alvarez got a hit in his 3 at-bats, an RBI single. Jeff McNeil 0 for 2. Luis Torrens 2 for 2. Brett Beatty 1 for 2. Then you had overall the Mets scored 6 runs to beat the Astros by a score of 6-2. But as I mentioned, Clay Holmes was, I think, the bigger story of the day. Maybe not the biggest headline, but maybe the bigger takeaway for the future. We saw something in Clay Holmes. The Mets have a guy that has the chance to be really good. I want to talk about what he did and the arsenal that he showcased, because this guy went from a 3-pitch mix as a reliever to a guy that might have a 6-pitch mix that can be very effective. So we're going to go through all of that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the game tips off. The NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off, or if you want to bet on the fourth quarter, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps you in every moment of the game. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or I'm picking a player to hit that clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app, easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make everyone more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 13,000 subscribers by opening day. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Clay Holmes made his first start in a Mets uniform on Saturday. He faced 9 batters. He retired them all, got 4 groundouts, 3 strikeouts, 2 flyouts, and needed only 34 pitches to get through 3 perfect innings. 26 of those 34 pitches were strikes. He was so efficient going through 3 innings that he had to go into the bullpen and throw 15 additional pitches to get that pitch count up. This is a guy that is ready to go. He is ready to take this transition head on and be a legitimate weapon out of the starting rotation the same way he was out of the bullpen. And what I saw, and what I think all of us saw that was watching the game on Saturday, is a guy that has rounded out a really nice arsenal. As a reliever, he didn't need a bunch of different pitches. Sinker was obviously his primary offer, as it still is. He threw that sinker a ton last year. That's why he had the best ground ball rate in baseball, because of that sinker. And then he had 2 different variations of a breaking ball that he was able to use to get strikeouts, a sweeper and a slider. But as a starting pitcher, we've been talking about it. He had to add more to the arsenal. And the big question was, would he add a changeup? Not only did he add a changeup, he added a kick changeup. Now, what is a kick changeup? I've been looking it up because it was thrown around when, Clay Holmes, showed it, and it kind of had some highlights that went viral. When you get on Pitching Ninja's feed, it's typically going to be a good way to get your name and a new offering out there. And this kick change essentially is a two-seam grip, but a changeup. And what it does is it gives more depth to a changeup. And for Clay Holmes, what's really interesting, you're talking about a sinker, which is his primary offering. What is a sinker? Two-seam fastball. So now you're throwing a two-seam changeup, and it tunnels so well. So if you're a hitter and you're gearing up for the primary offering for Clay Holmes, that sinker, which is going to come in at 95 miles per hour if you're a right-handed batter, it's going to come into your bat. So you're gearing up for it, and you see a pitch following the same tunnel. So tunnel means, his arm slot, where it comes out of his hand, right? And where it's coming in on you, that tunnel. It's following the same tunnel. The difference, the pitch has more depth, and instead of coming in at 95 miles per hour, it comes in at 88 and just has a little more bite to it at the end. It produced some pretty ugly swings. This kick change that he has now factored into the mix, it has a chance to be a great offering for Clay Holmes, where all of a sudden you now have a pitch that you can mirror with your sinker to really keep hitters guessing. He still has the 2+ breaking balls. So right there, I think that's the primary 4-pitch mix. He didn't really throw the slider much today. It was more sweeper. So it was really fastball, changeup, sweeper as the 3 primary offerings that he threw that accounted for 80% of the pitches he threw. But then he has some taste breakers. He added a cutter. I didn't expect to see that. A cutter gives him another pitch that will go and kind of break in the same horizontal way as his slider or his sweeper, but it's going to be a lot tighter, going to come in harder. So that gives him another counter that he can throw early in counts, a way to, maybe attack some lefties. Similar, way that he uses sinker against righties, maybe do the same thing with the cutter against lefties. Now, the other factor, the other pitch that he brought to the table today was a 4-seam fastball. Now, he's thrown it in the past, but not often. He does not have a good 4-seam fastball. And even now, it's not great. I think he's gotten it to a point where it's probably closer to league average, but it's still not going to be the pitch he should be relying on. But to be able to throw with confidence is key. You look at some of the metrics behind it, had an induced vertical break today of 17.2 degrees. Now, what does induced vertical break mean? That is essentially ride, okay, on a fastball. So a good induced vertical break for a fastball is anything between 18 and 20. I mean, particularly if you get that induced vertical break to 18, it's a good fastball. If you get it 20 and above, you're talking about an elite fastball. So Jonah Tong, one of the Mets' top pitching prospects, his whole, game is based on induced vertical break on his fastball. He gets incredible ride on that 4-seam fastball with an induced vertical break over 20 degrees. That's why he's skyrocketed up prospect rankings last year, because everyone saw the metrics on that fastball and realized he's got a plus pitch. And when your plus pitch is a plus fastball, you really got a chance. So that's a level that I'm not expecting Clay Holmes to reach. He's not going to get a fastball that's going to become suddenly a top pitch for him, but he doesn't have to have a top fastball. He doesn't have to have a pitch that's elite as a 4-seam. It's just a taste breaker. It just gives hitters another thing to keep them off balance, where they're sitting sinker. Maybe they're thinking sinker, changeup, sweeper, slider, cutter. They got all these other pitches in their head that they're trying to gear up for. And then he throws 97 up in the zone on you. And it's a pitch that can catch you flat-footed and he can throw it by you. He doesn't have to throw it a bunch, but he can throw it. And then all of a sudden, now you're thinking about that. So now all of a sudden, Clay Holmes has the ability to work every single quadrant, to be able to work, when you're looking at a right-handed batter, down and in with the sinker, the changeup, down and away with the cutter, the slider, the sweeper, up and in or up and away with the 4-seam fastball. He's got it all that he could throw at you. And now if he just continues to focus on his sequencing and the Mets help him along in that regard, you are looking at a guy that's not just going to be able to make this change and be a starting pitcher and pitch to a 4.2 ERA and give you 150 innings. You're looking at a guy that can be a frontline pitcher for you. I'm not saying he's going to be the Mets ace this year. I would certainly hope that that's Kodai Senga or Sean Manaea, because I would like to see those guys, for Manaea, replicate what he did last year. For Senga, replicate what he did in 2023. But Clay Holmes can be right there with those guys. He really can. He has an elite pitch mix, and you're talking about a guy. And look, let me rein in a little bit. Let me not get ahead of myself. He just flashed what could become an elite pitch mix. This is a guy that was not just a good reliever. He was a great reliever for the Yankees. He had a plus sinker, a plus sweeper, a plus slider. Now, if you're telling me he has a plus changeup too, it doesn't really matter how good the cutter is, although it did look pretty good. It doesn't really matter how good that four seam is. Those are just other pitches that he can throw to keep hitters off balance. But if that changeup continues what we just saw in this game, and he continues to progress on that pitch, to be able to pair that with his sinker, it really just gives him a lot of weapons, particularly against left-handed batters. Because, yeah, you could throw sinkers against lefties and ground balls. But if they don't have any other pitch that's diving away from them, what else do they have to look for down and away? All they're looking for is a sinker. But now if you can throw a changeup down and away on them, it changes the game. So to say Clay Holmes can be this year's Michael King, it's not a stretch. To say he can be this year's Ronaldo Lopez, it's not a stretch. The question is, those two guys had very different outcomes when it came to how they held up as a starting pitcher. And that's what I'm more worrying about or wondering about at this point, rather than if his stuff's going to play. I feel pretty confident that his stuff is going to play if he's pitching at his best, if he is fresh and his arm feels good and he is attacking the zone the way you saw him attack the zone today. Because those pitches that he has are plus pitches. I think it's going to round into a very good arsenal. But is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to be able to shoulder the burden of a starter's workload? That's what we're going to have to watch this year. But if he can, and he's a 6'5" guy that surely has the frame that you think might be able to do it, if he can do that for this team, all of a sudden you're looking at a pitcher that might be able to mirror his ERA that he's had over the last couple of years, pitch to a low 3s ERA and get you 140 innings, 150 innings. If he's ready to go in the playoffs too, I mean, this turns into the best signing of the offseason, not named Juan Soto. And when it comes to value, probably will become the best signing of the offseason, because it's going to be tough for Juan Soto to exceed the value of a contract that's paying him, when you're talking about average annual value, $51 million a year. But when you look at Clay Holmes, it's not going to be hard for him to exceed the value of his contract. He's making $13 million this year. Most starting pitchers got 15 or more. If Clay Holmes pitches to a level of a number 2 or a number 3 starter and gives you 27 really solid starts over 140, 150 innings, it's going to be an absolute steal. So great outing from Clay Holmes. Looking forward to see how he builds off of it. And we're looking forward to him facing the Astros again on opening day. Once we get to that point, as again, we talked about this a little bit on, I think it was yesterday's show. It is sort of lining up for Holmes to be the opening day starter. And that's a pretty wild place to be. I don't think that would happen if the Mets were playing that first game at home, but it would set them up to have either Sean Manaea or Kodai Senga start the home opener. And it would also give them a pitcher that's really had a lot of success against the Astros, that's going to be able to go through a righty-heavy lineup and potentially mow them down. So I could not be more pleased with what we saw to Clay Holmes. Only other pitching note I wanted to make for today's show, Danny Young allowed a run in his 1 inning of work, hit a batter and gave up an RBI double. Not a great way for Danny Young to start out his search to break camp, or his push to break camp with the New York Mets. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. If you want to hear more about Danny Young and the position battles that are going on in spring training throughout this month of February leading into March, make sure you check out yesterday's show. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.